Yo, what up, YouTube? Alright, guys, so in the last video, we worked on validating our login form. So, if just to recap, so if you remember, we set up this login helper class here, which extends this text watcher over here. So this object basically helps us to look or to listen for certain events when the user types in the details, like the email. For example, if I were to show you here, like the emails, and then also the password, right? So if the email username field is blank, it'll pop up a message, and then if the password field is blank as well, it'll also pop up a message. Just type in something there. So as you can see, okay, obviously that's not a valid email, that's why it's also showing an error message and stuff. But in any case, like I explained in the last video, basically these methods over here, they listen for certain events. This method would kick before the user types anything within the login form. This one basically kicks in every time the user types a letter or anything within that particular field. So this kicks in all the time. And then but the main one we used was this one, after text change. So basically this one will listen for, let's say, when the user leaves the form, let's say he leaves the username field and goes to the password field. And so this is the method that would kick when listening to that event. And basically we're pulling that login validation helper right here. So again, like I said, this is the method that we used to check for certain events when the user types in their stuff. So what I want to focus on in this video is authenticating the user. Don't worry, I'm well aware we haven't started with the registration part. We will get to that. With Practically Plus is going to do exactly what we did within this login validation helper class here. We're going to extend the exact same text watcher object and then basically use that to validate our registration form. But what I want to do is authenticate the user and then get the user to log in and then get redirected to the main activity, right? So that we can start displaying the notes that the user has created. Now, if you remember, when we were testing our API using the using the Postman. If you remember, we used Postman to do our testing. So we're gonna use this very same user, Jane Doe, to log in this instance because we already have her registered within our application. So if I were to show you quickly, so if you check there, we have Jane Doe already registered here. So we're not going to use this John Doe one because we didn't do it correctly when we first registered, but this is the user we're going to test with. If we were to check notes, I don't know, Jane does have a couple of notes here. So basically that's what we're going to focus on in this video, authenticating the user and redirecting them to the main activity. Now, the first thing we need to do, as you saw there, we need to add Volley to our as a dependency into our project. Like I said, this is the library that I'm familiar with. So this is what we're going to use to validate the user. But what I need is to take the Java dependency. I only see Groovy and Kotlin. One second. So Volley is what we're going to use, and this is the package that we're going to use to do our HTTP request. So we're going to come to our Gradle.build file. Let's see. So the one that says app, the module that says app, that's the one we're going to use. Alright, so I'm not sure why it's using Kotlin, but in any case, let's try it and see if it works well in this state. So I'm going to copy this here, right? And then I'm going to paste it just below here, right? And then let's sync the project. Okay, so while that's doing that, what we're gonna do now is come into the login activity. So the first thing I want to do is add a particular method here that's gonna take us to the what you call it, to the main activity, right? So I'm gonna say public I know it's a long name, but I just want it to make sense. Okay, so now this is the method that we're going to use to basically send the user to the main activity layout or page or view when the user is authenticated. So the first thing I need to do is say intent and then we're going to say login, and then we're going to say main activity dot class, right? And then here we can also display a success message, so I'll just put a toast here. So we're gonna say login dot this, and then here we can just say log in successful. I'm gonna pick length long. Alright, and then after here you can say finish, so that it closes off the activity or the login activity. Okay. Okay, so while we're at it, let's add another method that's gonna do something similar. So I'm gonna paste this right above the main activity intent method. Alright, I'm gonna change this to go to register, and then we can move this, we don't need this. Alright, so this is login activity, then this needs to change to register. Alright, so basically remember, let me just pull up the, so right below the sign in button here, right, we're gonna put a text message here saying that if you already have an account, if you don't have an account, click here to register. And then basically the text that we're gonna set up here will utilize this method to send the user to the registration page. We will add that shortly. Let's just first finish up with what I'm trying to do here. Let's change that to register activity. Alright, so looking down here, it seems like the project is still building. So what I want to do now is let it finish running. I'm going to pause the video, and then once it's done building the project, we're going to then continue to create our class or another method down here that we're going to use to authenticate the user. So for the time being, let me just pause the video, and then as soon as it's done, we will continue with the project. one moment for me, please. Alright guys, so looks like the project is done building. Alright, so let's continue. So now the first thing we need to do, like I said, we added the Volley library here, into our project. So now we're gonna go back to the Volley website. So I'm gonna come down here and go to where it says make a set up a request queue. Or you can come here and say send a simple request or something like that, but then let's just go here, make a request queue. So the one thing I'm looking for is, sorry, let me go back, overview, send a simple request, set up a request queue. So what I'm basically looking for is this section over here where we create a singleton pattern. So before copying, alright, I'm not gonna try and type out all of this from scratch, it's pretty much pointless, but we're gonna copy everything here. So copy everything. If you're using Kotlin, just copy the Kotlin section over here, but if you're still using Java like I am, just copy this section here. So you'll see there, it will say Java, and then all you have to do is copy all the way up until just below where it says public image loader. So I'm going to copy this, and then let's minimize for now. So now in our project here, we're going to create a class. Now I'm going to name it the exact same thing as what's showing here within the it's going to say here my singleton, right? So I'm going to name it the exact same thing, my, I hope I spelled that right. And then I want to put a comment here. Right. Okay. So I'm going to paste everything we just copied right here within this class. Actually, okay, let me remove this. So I'm gonna remove this class, public class here, and then I have to remove the trailing, what you call it, parentheses. Okay, so let's add these. Let's import all of these other objects. Right. Then context, and let's see. Import class. Okay. Volley. Alright. All the errors should be gone now. Okay, so that's our singleton class. Alright, just also make sure that you have all of these imported at the top there. Alright, so basically this is our singleton class that we're gonna use that we're gonna utilize to run our Volley requests. So now that we have that, we can come back here at the login activity. Let's close this for now, and then at the top here, the first thing I need to do is say private and then request queue. Request queue. So remember, again, we're importing this request queue, this request queue here from the Volley namespace. Okay, that's fine. So now what do we need to do? I think first thing we need to do is come into the what's this? You need to come in here within the onCreate method, where we need to instantiate the mySingleton class that we just created here, right? So the first thing we need to do is request request queue, right? And then we're gonna equal that to my singleton dot get instance, and then obviously we're gonna have to pass in the login activity, and then get request queue. So basically this is just so that we don't keep recreating this request queue. If an instance already exists, it'll use that very same one that's been instantiated. Otherwise, it'll create a new one. What I mean by that, if you check here, this is what the method does. Where is this? Right. Forget this one for now. So basically, this get instance basically checks to see if this instance is null. If it is, create a new one. Otherwise, just return whatever instance is running. So basically, that's why we created that singleton there, and that's what we're pulling over here. I hope I made sense there. In any case, that's it for now. So let's come back down here, right? So here we're gonna create a method public So we're going to take in two parameters here. The first one is going to be email, and then the next one is going to be password. Here we're going to set up a couple of data objects. Alright, so we're going to say hash map basically we're going to use this hash map to send the parameters to our API. Remember, it's expecting two parameters, which is the email and the password. So that's what we're setting up here. So we're going to say params dot put email, right, as email. The next one will be password. So remember, here we are going to send a JSON object, right, or a JSON object request. And the reason being is that if the user is authenticated and all the details they provided are correct, the API is going to return a JSON object in return. So that's the object we're going to go for here. So we're going to say JSON object request, right? I'm just going to name it request, and then from here we're going to add all our stuff. So we're going to say new JSON object request. Let's see, int method, nope. Yeah, right. So we're going to say request dot method dot post, right? And then from here, okay, so here we need the URI. So let's do this. I'm going to create a separate class within here. so the reason I'm doing this is because I don't wanna clutter the methods. So I'm gonna say link API. I'm gonna call it API link. Okay, and then in here we're gonna create a couple of methods that are gonna help us return the API links. So firstly, let's open a terminal. Okay, so I just want to show you the current API that my machine is using. So the current AP, what you call it, the current IP address that I'm using is this one, 192.168.0.200, right? So I have to copy that. I have to put it like this. Right, so it's going to be HTTP .168.0.200, right? And then if you remember, let's go back to, so this was the what you call it, oh yeah, I need the port number as well. So the port number is going to be 8007, if I remember correctly, right? So so we need this part right here, API/v1, right? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to create a method here, public I'll name this auth user API. So here I'll say return base URL and then plus, what was the link again? Auth login, right? And that's basically it. Alright, so here within our login page, the next parameter that comes after the request method is going to be that. So we're gonna say, so remember we made it as a static method, so we don't need to instantiate it. We can just say API links helper dot auth user, right? Okay, and then now the next thing we need is the parameters here, right? gonna say new, and then here we can pass in the params. Then lastly, we need the response. So we're going to say new response listener. Let me shorten this. So response listener, as you can see, it's grayed out, but I hope you can see what's going on there. That's the response listener. So basically, this object is going to return. It's going to return the response to us. Okay. So let's see. Now we need to add. The on error response. So here we can say new one second here, response error listener. Okay, so when we get our errors, this is where we're gonna display them. So for now I'm gonna put in a toast. Just say fail to log in, and then here I want the message to be long. Okay, alright, so let's put that there. Now the other thing that we need to add right below this is to add the request queue. So now we're going to add it to this object here, this one over here. Okay, so we're going to say request queue, alright, and then we're going to say dot add, and then we're going to say request. So remember, this request object we're adding here is this one here, the name of this JSON object request. Okay, so what else do we need? For now, we can print this to like the error.print stack. Right, that's it. But this should be sufficient to show us whether or not the user logged in successfully or did it fail. Alright, so this is where the errors are going to display, and then if we have successfully logged in, the success response will be within here, within this object here. It's going to be passed into this object that you see here, the JSON object response. Okay, so let's see. The first thing I need to do is, I forgot one more thing. Did we add the preferences? Okay, we did add preferences there. Alright, so we're gonna come in here. Right, we're gonna say preferences equals to okay, and then we're gonna say string so remember we created a string resource helper, and then we're gonna say dot get user default preference name. So the name of this, just remember, is user info, right? And then we're using this message to this method to pull this name. Okay, that's what the name of the preference object is going to be, user info. All right, and then here we're going to say mode private. All right, and then here we're going to say shared. Alright, so the shared preference editor, right, is going to equal to this preference dot edit. So remember here we're basically setting the name as well, and we're also getting which preferences that we want to add, the next information that we're going to add. So it's user info, and then here we're basically calling the editor which is what we're going to use to store the details that are coming back from the response object, right? So now we're going to put this in a try catch block. And then here we can just say so this JSON object exception is for this JSON object response here, because we might not necessarily get anything from the response, so therefore that's why I have to put this in a try catch block, right? So I'm going to say end of okay. So now you'll see now this error message is going to remove now, or it's going to go away. So we're going to say editor dot put int. So this one is going to be the user ID, even though we're not going to use it, but I'm just going to add it this in any case. Dot get int, right? And then I will show you now where we are getting this from, or why we are naming it this way. Okay, right, then we're gonna get the first name, and then last name. The username, I think we named it email instead of username, so I'm going to say email, and then we're also going to get the token. Now the last one we need to add is a boolean value, which is going to be authenticated. Snap. Okay, this is going to be my apologies, I forgot to change these, so I'm going to say put string as well, and then here we're getting a string. And then this is going to be put boolean, and then this is not gonna, we're not gonna get this from the response object, we're just gonna set it to true. So here we're gonna say get string. Okay, I think that's pretty much all we need. Now the last thing we need to do is editor dot apply. So this is gonna store that information. Alright, and then remember, we created that go to main activity if authenticated. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Now if something goes wrong here, we'll just say e.print stack. Don't need to do anything else after this. So just to recap, we're storing the user's details into preferences, right? And then we are getting the name user info, and this is the name we're going to use to store this is the name that this information is going to be stored under. If you create a different preference and you give it a different name, this information won't be stored within that preference. So if we call it like contacts, if we call the preference contacts, and then basically we can use that preference object to store maybe contact information within that preference. And then when you want the contact information, you do the exact same thing. You say preference, get shared preferences name, and then you get the name by saying, let's say you named it contacts, you get contacts here and there, and then all the information is being stored in a key value pair. So the user ID will be stored as an integer, and then the name of that will be user ID. The first name is going to be the key for the first name will be first name. I just kept it the same. So all of this information is going to be stored under the preference that's called user info, right? So I hope again I was able to explain that. But yeah, let's continue. So let's see. The first thing I need to do is open the I need to open the IntelliJ object. The API that we built using IntelliJ, right? 1 second. Alright guys, I have my IntelliJ project, the API we built with Springboot open here. So the reason I did this was so that I can explain the Android setup as well. So like I said, here we are expecting a JSON object response, right? So when we send the email and the password, which is what we're passing in here, right? We are sending this to our API, right? Remember we created the helper here, which is going to be this link, right? And then it's obviously going to go to the auth login, which is this part is always going to be the same. So I had to create like the base URI there, or URL, and then we're just gonna concatenate whatever the links to wherever we want to go within these methods. We'll create more within this class, but yeah. So here we're sending in the username and password like we were on the Postman application here. But after logging in, remember we are expecting a response object. The response object that we need, let me just open the project again. So if you come here, auth response, remember it's going to return the user details, right? It's going to return the token, the user details like the name, first name, and so forth, right? The name, first name, last name, and the user ID, right? Here we're saying get username, but let me just quickly go to let me just close all these ones. Alright, so this is the response that we're gonna get, right? Username, user ID, first name, last name, etc. All these other information we're not gonna need because that's not what we set up here within our auth response, right? So we're just gonna get the username, first name, last name. Now just to be safe, I wanna do one last test using our auth just to see what are the parameters, because if you get the names wrong, for example, I'll show you again. So if you get the names wrong, it's not gonna work. So let's do this. I have to run this project, otherwise we won't be able to authenticate. Right, so while that project is busy building up, I'm going to pause the video and then we will test once we get back, once it's done. Running. Alright, so our Spring Boot application is running. So the first thing I want to do is go to Postman, right? Then I'm going to say send, and let's see if you can authenticate. Alright, so we were able to authenticate. I don't know why it's displaying like this. Let me just check. Alright, so as you can see, the name we are expecting is token, user ID, username, last name, first name. So that means we have to go back to our Android application and change these. Right, so let me check again. So last name, it's going to be small letters and then capital N for name. Username is just going to be for the email, obviously, so let's change that. So the email will be username. No, this can be fine, let's leave it like that. This is the one that we need to change. Username. Token is fine, so last name is going to be last name. First name is going to be first name, and then obviously user ID. Right, user ID, first name, last name, username, token. Right, so all these values here, right, are going to be stored within these. So for the preferences, we can name them like this, which is fine. It's just because we are expecting them from the JSON, from the API, this is how they are returning. So therefore, in order for this to successfully store within this preference, we have to get the correct names. So everything so far is fine. Now if you remember this boolean here where we say authenticated, so in the splash screen, I'm going to open that quickly. Here we are checking to see if the user is authenticated. Now here on the let me close these validation helpers and what. So here within the login stream, remember login screen activity, we are now setting the boolean to true, authenticated, which means that now when we log in, when going back to log in, this value will be set to true. So if it wasn't set to true by default, it was going to be false, right? It's going to be false by default, but now we are changing that value to true. So now, which means that the next time the user tries to log into the application, it will check to see if the user is already authenticated, therefore they won't need to re-log in again. So that's basically why we are setting this value here. The sole purpose for it is basically this splash screen display here, where when the user opens the app, it checks to see if they're authenticated. If they are, it's just going to send them straight to the main activity. Otherwise, it's going to send them to the login screen. Okay, so look, I think so far we've done everything that we needed to do. Already the video is like 40 something minutes long. I wasn't intending for it to be this long. So I think that I'm torn between whether or not I should do this in the next video or not. But I think let's just end it here for now. And then we will test and see if the user can authenticate. We're going to reinstall this application, and then from there on authenticate the user and see if everything works. I think we're done with the setting up and stuff. So yeah, man, let's continue within the next video, and then yeah, we'll take it from there. Again, guys, thank you for those of you who stuck all the way through. Thank you for watching. Again, if you like what you've seen so far, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you within the next video. Thanks again for watching, and then cheers for now.